Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. In this video, you're checking out an updated Magicka Warden build for the Elder Scrolls Online. And not just that, this is a vampire Magicka Warden build for the Greymoor chapter. This is going to be a strong setup for both soloing and groups in ESO. And we're making use of some of the brand new vampire abilities, as well as one of the new item sets for the Greymoor chapter. And this build is just a lot of fun to play, you guys. So, as usual, we'll be going over all the stats, gear set options, skills, champion points. I'll talk about the outfits, and we'll go over a basic rotation at the end. So if you're wondering how Vampire fits on the Magicka Warden, then stay tuned. This video is for you. Alright everybody, here we are back on the Magicka Warden, this time with an updated Vampire build for the Greymoor chapter. This is going to be primarily a solo build, but there are some group applications that we can talk about as well. So let's go ahead and jump into the stats. First of all, with our basic buffs on the back bar here, make sure that's active. And we're sitting at about 45k max Magicka. That does go up actually with our ultimate. 21k max health, 10k max stamina, over 1,000 Magicka recovery, and over 700 stamina recovery. For the spell damage, 2,600 there at base, and that does go up, obviously, when we are a vampire, using Sated Fury. So that'll be about 3,400, and then with our spell damage glyph active on the back bar, we're closer to 4,000. And then 50% spell critical, and about 16 and 15,000 spell and physical resistance overall on the setup. Of course, we got 64 points into max Magicka, being the Magicka Warden build. Running the Ozzymandos right now because I'm mostly soloing, so that extra spell penetration is definitely going to help. Then we got the blue food, max health and max Magicka. Vampire stage 1, which we will talk about when we get to the passives. And then we'll talk about how we get some of these other buffs on our Magicka Warden. Now, as far as the potion, if you can, you want to use tri-stat potions. That's just going to help you with a little bit of healing and a little bit of stamina sustain. If you don't have those, that's fine because you actually have your major spell buffs here on the Warden. So you can actually just use plain old Magicka trash potions if you want on this setup, which is very nice. Then as far as the race, a couple of good options, I think. I usually prefer High Elf. The spell recharge passive is actually very good, you guys. You get the extra Magicka or stamina back, whichever one is lowest. And then you also get some damage reduction while channeling, which we are going to be using lightning staff heavy attacks on this build. So that's going to help out there. We do get the 2,000 max Magicka, and then the extra spell damage, obviously. It's going to be nice on a vampire. Now, the other option I would recommend is going to be the Breton race because you do get the cost reduction. So either one's really fine in my opinion. But I think that covers the basics pretty much. Let's talk about the gear sets next. So starting off with our first 5-piece set on the Magicka Warden, I decided to use Necropotence, the old school max Magicka set. Stacks really nicely on our Magicka Warden. Like I said, fully buffed for over 50k max Magicka on this build. And that's because we just get so much Magicka from this set. Look at this, you guys, over 6k max Magicka. You can see the 5-piece bonus there. You have to have a pet active, which if you didn't know, the Warden Betty Netch here, your little Netch buff, actually counts for that. So you can see my Magicka does go up once I have the Betty Netch active. So that's going to proc Necropotence. So for the weapon, I do recommend a lightning staff front bar and then a frost staff on the back bar if you can. That's just going with the overall ice theme of the Warden here. And then in terms of the enchants and the traits, you can run precise on the front bar if you want. Other things are fine as well. Infused is great, sharpened, Nirnhoned. You can choose what you want there on the front bar. And I am using the Absorb Magicka enchant just for a little bit of extra sustain. Then as far as the back bar staff, I do recommend Infused. That's the only one where you really want to get an Infused staff if you can, because you can see that this is what's going to max out our spell damage. It says 452 on the stat sheet, but that's really closer to 600 when you talk about your major spell damage buff there. So the weapon is going to count for 2, and then for the other 3 set pieces, we're just going to run 3 pieces of jewelry. So Necropotence neck and 2 rings. All spell damage as the enchantment. And the traits are really up to you, you guys. You can run just the basic arcane trait. You do not have to trait change these. I just think if you want to kind of maximize the damage on the Magicka Warden, then you probably will want to change these eventually to Bloodthirsty. I like running at least 2 Bloodthirsty and then 1 Infused just to help push that spell damage a little bit higher, especially since we are a vampire specializing in that spell damage buff. So that's going to cover the first 5-piece set. Now for the second 5-piece set, I really wanted something that would make it easier to run a vampire build on the Warden class, and something with healing is what I was really looking for. So I started checking out this new set from the Greymoor chapter. It's called Winter's Respite. So if you aren't familiar with this one, it gives you Magicka Recovery and 2 bonuses for max Magicka. Fits pretty well with Necropotence. And then for the 5-piece here, casting abilities that leave an effect on the ground creates a healing circle of frost around you for 10 seconds, and you get about 2,500 health every 1 second for 10 seconds. So this is actually a very powerful heal. It's a passive heal that just procs off of our back bar abilities. So like your Wall of Elements, for example, you can see the Frost blockade is going out in front of me, but this big circle around me that's healing me, that is the Winter's Respite effect. So I'm getting that free heal for 10 seconds. This also procs off our other AoE abilities like this one. So this is actually quite a lot of nice healing. Now we do have other healing on the build, which we need to stay alive as a vampire because we do have that health drain effect from running Sated Fury. But this is going to be nice to keep our health up overall on the Warden setup. So very, very nice set. Again, this is from the Greymoor chapter, so this is brand new to the game. And it does drop in the Overland Zone, so you can pick this up from Delves, from World Bosses. Pretty easy set to get. And it's a nice overall set, I think. It's great for healer, too, if you want to run this as a healer build. And it's pretty cool. It does fit in with the Warden Ice theme very, very nicely, I would say. So 5 pieces of this on the body. It is a light armor set, and then Divines as the trait. If you can get Divines, that'll be your best bet. And then Max Magicka on all the enchants there. So 5 pieces of light on the body. Then for the monster set, going along with the Ice theme, we're doing Ice Heart on this build just for the extra spell critical, since we don't have any other spell critical bonuses other than our skills and the precise trait. So I thought this was nice. Then we do get that free damage shield, over a 6k damage shield. Plus it does do frost damage, which is amped by our Warden passives. So this is a very nice fit, you guys, on the Warden. Plus the extra survivability. You just can't beat that if you want a solo build in ESO. In terms of the weights here, just to maximize our Undaunted, heavy helmet, medium shoulders, that's always the best way to go on a light armor build, because this is giving us 6% extra stats through our Undaunted passives. Then I just left on the max health enchant on the helmet, and I left on the stamina enchantment on the shoulders. So that's the basic setup in terms of gear. We've got Ice Heart helmet, Winter's Respite on the body, and then weapons and jewelry is going to be Necro. Now I will say, if you don't have access to this winter set quite yet, another set that's very nice and similar to this is actually Bahara's Curse. I run that sometimes on my Magicka Nightblade builds. That's another healing ground effect. So if you don't have Winters yet, you can check out Bahara's Curse. That's another nice option that also does damage, though it doesn't heal for quite as much. Winters does about 1,000 more healing per second, which is pretty strong. Now let's jump over to skills on our front bar, which again is going to be that Lightning Staff. Starting off with Sated Fury. This is going to be our first ability from the Vampire skill line. This is the new Vampire rework for the Greymoor chapter. That's the second ability here. And Sated Fury is going to be my preferred morph. Now, what does this do? Basically, you toggle it on and it increases your weapon and spell damage by 660, but it also costs health. About 1,800 health per second, and every second that health cost does increase. Now, the nice thing about this morph, though, is you can toggle it off. And when you do that, you can see while I'm going here, my health is decreasing. But as soon as I toggle off Sated Fury, I can leave it up for, however long I want to leave it up for. Once I decide I'm getting a little bit too low, like right here, toggle it off, you can see 21k burst heal. Back to full health, no problem. So that's why I really like this morph still. And of course, for the very, very powerful spell damage buff there on the Vampire class. So definitely check that out. Next up, we got Deep Fissure. This is from the Warden class skills from the Animal Companions. It's going to be our second ability there, and Deep Fissure is the Magicka morph. Does very nice AoE magic damage, you guys, and also Major Breach, so that reduces enemy spell resistance by 50 to 80. That means all of our abilities are going to do more damage as long as you have that Major Breach debuff on them. So that's going to be very important. That's an important part of our rotation for the Magicka Warden. And next up, we got a Flex Spot. Inner Light's going to be very nice to start with. So that's from the Mages Guild down here. first ability that you get from the Mage's Guild skill line. Morph it to Inner Light because this gives you 5% max Magicka, plus the bonus spell critical. That's a 10% bonus to spell critical, so very, very strong buff, and it is passive. Don't have to do anything to get that buff. So it's going to be nice for like overland bosses where you're not getting too much pressure. But in cases where you are taking a little bit more damage, I do like to substitute a heal in this spot. And Wardens have lots and lots of nice heals in the Green Balance skill line. What I would prefer, if I need an extra heal, that's going to be Leeching Vines. This is very good for soloing. You can see in the Green Balance skill line, that's the third ability that we get. So this gives us 2,000 health every 1 second when we're taking damage for 10 seconds. And it also applies minor lifesteal. So that means enemies around you, if you damage them, they basically heal you back for over 600 health every 1 second. So you're getting close to 3,000 health per second from this ability. Then, of course, we've got our Winter set, and we have another heal on the back bar. So the healing on this build can be very good. If you need it, just slot in Leeching Vines, like I said, right there on the front bar. Now, next up, we want another damaging ability. Some options here as well. So what I like running most times is going to be Fetcher Infection. It's just a very strong damage over time, you guys. Over 15k magic damage over 10 seconds. Also, it gets buffed by 50% every other cast. So this can be over a 20k tooltip unbuffed. It's a very strong dot ability. It also puts minor vulnerability on the enemy. That means they're going to take 8% more damage from all of your skills as well, including your group skills, by the way. If you want to run this in a group, that's a great group debuff to have on your build. So I do really like that, just for an all-purpose kind of dot damage ability. Now, something else that's very strong that you can run as a vampire is you can actually run the new Vampire Spammable ability in this position as well. That's called Blood for Blood. So in the new Vampire skill line, that is the first ability that you get right here. It does cost health, but you can see it does a lot of magic damage, you guys. It also does bonus damage based on your missing health. And the fact that this actually costs health means it's very easy to sustain on the build because we have so much healing over time. It's basically a free spammable. And like I said, it does hit very hard. So like I said, definitely consider that if you want a little bit more upfront burst damage, if you want more of the vampire playstyle, if you want more of that vampire feeling with the blood claws, definitely check out that ability on your front bar. If you want something just easy, simple, then we can put Fetcher Infection back here on the front bar. Last normal ability, let's talk about Bird of Prey from Animal Companions. That's the last ability that you get, actually. Gives you movement speed when you activate it. It also gives you passive Minor Berserk, so 8% more damage. That affects all of your damaging abilities, by the way, so 8% damage done is a pretty nice buff, and you don't have to cast it for that buff, so keep that in mind. We also get bonus damage done through our Animal Companions passives, which we'll talk about in a minute. So very, very nice ability to slot there. In terms of the ultimate, you really can slot anything you want here on the front bar. Think about passives though. So for example, something I like to run is the Mage's Guild ultimate. You can run either morph here, so Shooting Star or Ice Comet. This does good damage, does damage over time and gives you ultimate back, but this also gives you passives. It gives you an extra 2% max Magicka and Magicka recovery from your Mage's Guild passives, because we do basically have a better ultimate, I think, on the back bar, which we'll talk about in a minute. So basically just anything you want here for passives. You could do the Sigic Order, Undo Ultimate if you want here. That's another nice option as well. Speaking about that back bar, let's go ahead and bar swap here. Checking out our Ice Staff on the back bar, starting off with our Blockade of Frost. That is from the Destruction Staff skill line. So right here, second ability. I do like Blockade just because it lasts longer. You can see 14-second duration. This is going to do very nice frost damage. Can potentially snare and root your enemy, and it can also debuff them with Minor Maim. And of course, we want this down because it's proccing the Winter set, giving us that very nice heal over time. So yep, just a great all-around ability. And it does also proc our spell damage enchant, so super important to maintain this as much as possible. Then another damage over time ability, Winter's Revenge. This is from the Warden class skill line from Winter's Embrace. That's the second ability here, and Winter's Revenge is the morph that you want. It's more for DPS builds because this does scale with your spell damage and max Magicka. The other morph scales with your health, but you can see it does very good frost damage. Can also apply that chilled status effect, so that's Minor Maim. That makes your enemies do 15% less damage to you. And of course, that also procs Winters, so very nice on the set up here. And then we just have buffs here for the rest of our normal abilities. Lotus Blossom. This comes from Green Balance. This is one of our heals. So that's the second to last ability here. And this does healing based off your light and heavy attacks. Now it also gives you Major Prophecy when you have this buff up. So if you take off Mage Light, for example, like I have here, I have Leeching Vines instead of Inner Lights. I still want to get that Major Prophecy buff. So I'm getting that from Lotus Blossom right there. That's giving me that extra 10% spell critical from having that buff active. But really we like this for the heal. I mean, check that out. Over 4k health every time you do a heavy attack. And so what you can do as part of your rotation, just weave in heavy attacks, you guys, because that's giving you over 4k health back, and that can crit as well. So you can get very juicy big heals off of this with those heavy attacks. Then we've got Ice Fortress, of course. This is from Winter's Embrace as well. That's the first ability that we get. This is our major resolve buff, so 50 to 80 physical and spell resistance, plus the minor protection buff, so that's 8% damage reduction on our character. Very, very strong. Make sure you keep that up all the time. Here's what it looks like. And then our last buff here is going to be Blue Betty, so that's the little magic pet that also procs Necropotence, giving us the extra max Magicka from that set. It also gives us major sorcery, so 20% spell damage, and some nice Magicka sustain as well while you have that active. So make sure you keep that up as well. And then in terms of the ultimate, the back bar ultimate, the big boy ultimate that we're going to be using most of the time on this build, like I said, Northern Storm, you guys. This does massive AoE frost damage. Also increases our max Magicka by 15% for 30 seconds. 30 seconds, that's a long, very long buff. So that's going to be great for pushing our damage up and also reducing our damage taken. You can see major protection there for that 8 seconds as well. So that's a 30% damage reduction, just so you can kind of see what that looks like. Casting that on the back bar, you'll see we have now 30 seconds of max Magicka. And then if you're running Mage Light, obviously with the extra 5% there, you'll get just over 50k max Magicka on your build, which is very, very strong. Now, what about the Vampire Ultimate? Swarming Scion, which is kind of like the AoE damage Vampire Ultimate. You can see it does 4,000 magic damage every second. It's not quite as much damage as Northern Storm. You do get some extra stats as well, so this would push you over 50k max Magicka as well. Though not for 30 seconds, this would be for 20 seconds. So that is an option, definitely on the build. I just wanted more of the Frost Mage, going for kind of the cold-blooded vampire theme here with a lot of ice magic. But you can definitely slot in Swarming Scion if you want. So either way, the choice is up to you. But let's talk about passives now, since we are done with the normal abilities. What passives do you need on a vampire build? Honestly, we're not going to be making use of very many of them, though you can if you choose. Now let's talk about this. Feed, this is what describes the vampire stages and the different increases and decreases to your character based on the stage. So stage 1, you have 10% reduced health recovery, 5% flame damage taken. Your regular abilities cost 3% more, and your vampire abilities cost 6% less. And obviously those numbers go up based on the stage that you are. So I still don't think stage 4 is really worth it unless you're fully invested into a vampire build. For something like this, I think stage 1 is fine, but you can obviously play around with it and tweak this based on how you want your character to play. Now you can still benefit from Darkstalker at stage 1. That reduces the time it takes to enter sneak. For Strike from the Shadows though, you do need to be at least stage 2. And this buffs spell damage when you're coming out of something like Mist Form. Blood Ritual, this is how you infect other players. And then Undeath, you do need stage 3 for this. This does reduce your damage taken. So I'm not benefiting from this right now. And then Unnatural Movement at stage 4. This is where you can become invisible while sprinting after 3 seconds. So the passives are pretty cool. I mean, they'll play into kind of a nice RP build if you want. But for this particular setup, I'm not really using all of them. Now, in terms of the class passives, though, these you definitely do want to pick up. Under Animal Companions Bond with Nature, this gives you a heal back anytime one of your companions dies. This also counts for our Deep Fisher. You get that little heal, which is nice. Savage Beast, you also get Ultimate from casting Deep Fisher. That's why we want to keep that in our rotation. Flourish gives you 12% Magicka and Stamina recovery when you have an Animal Companion ability on the bar. That's why we want Betty Netch on the back bar, by the way. just to keep that recovery maxed out. In advanced species, we do get bonus damage done, 2% for each animal companion ability slotted, so that's pretty strong. Under green balance, it's going to be very nice for our healing, you guys. Accelerated growth. We can get major mending on the Magicka Warden. If you heal yourself under 40%, that means your healing will increase by 25%. That's a very strong buff. Definitely good when you're low health. And then Nature's Gift, you get some sustain back from this one. Emerald Moss, you will have increased healing on the front bar if you're using vines, like I mentioned earlier. But then Maturation, this is a very nice one. This gives us the minor toughness buff, so that's 10% max health for 20 seconds. Anytime you activate a heal. Now, this can also proc just off of our Winter's Respite set. You can see procking that heal. I now have that red buff on my bar. That's the minor toughness. So that's 10% extra max health. So it'll basically be up all the time. Make sure you get that one. And then Winter's Embrace, all of these are good as well. So Glacial Presence, this increases your chance to apply Shield. That will also increase your critical damage on the target. That's pretty nice. Frozen Armor will basically benefit from this on the back bar. You can see we have a lot of nice armor. Bonus armor on the back bar due to that passive. Icy Aura, this just reduces our snares. And then Piercing Cold, this is very nice, you guys. This also buffs are vampire spammable if you decide to use Blood for Blood. Because it does magic damage, you'll actually hit 10% harder with this. Now, obviously, Destruction Staff passives, you want all of these because we are running double Destro Staff. And then Light Armor, also pick all of these up as well. Very nice passives. For medium and heavy, you can get some of these. The main ones I recommend is the first 3 for heavy armor. So that's Resolve, Constitution, and Juggernaut. These other 2 you won't benefit from because we're not wearing 5 pieces of heavy or more. Vampire, we talked about these. Mage's Guild, you definitely do want these if you're running Inner Light or Shooting Star on your front bar. The main one that we want is Magicka Controller, so that's what's buffing our max Magicka even more on the front bar. As well as some bonus Magicka recovery, so that one is pretty nice. Psijic Order, we're not using this unless you want to use the Undo Ultimate, then you can, of course. Undaunted, you do want to unlock Undaunted Metal for that 6% bonus max health, max stamina, and max magicka. That's such good stats on this build. Racial passives, of course, you will want all of those. And then Alchemy Medicinal Use to make your potions last 30% longer. Talk about champion points quickly. Right now I'm set up for a solo build, but you can tweak these obviously for a group build if you want. So 23 into Warlord and Sprinter. 75 Tenacity, 64 Arcanist, 32 into Mooncalf, 26 into Shadow Ward and Tumbling in the Blue Tree, 27 into Blessed, 23 Elfborn, 56 Elemental Expert, 17 Spell Erosion, 35 Staff Expert, 40 Master at Arms, and then 72 into Thaumaturge. In the Red Tree, 72 Ironclad, 43 into Hardy and Elemental Defender, 31 Thick-Skinned, 1 into Light Armor Focus, 61 into Bastion, that's for our Ice Heart damage shield, and then 19 into Quick Recovery. In terms of the outfit style, if you are curious on this build, it's actually a costume all the way back from the Orsinium chapter. This is the Orsinium Sentry, so that comes from the Relic quest, and Orsinium has a pretty cool look, and you can even run the helmet if you want. If you want the full-on bear armor look, up to you. And then quickly, let's talk about a basic rotation here on the target dummy. So obviously you want to make sure you maintain your buffs. Wardens have a few extra buffs that you want to make sure you have up all the time. So that's your Frozen Armor, your Blue Betty, and your Lotus Flower. Those are going to be the 3 main buffs. Then you're just going to want to drop down your AoEs, both of those there. And that's going to proc our Winter's Respite as well. So we got our healing going. We got Ice Heart procced already. And then you want a bar swap. From there, you can go ahead and hit your Sated Fury to start getting that spell damage up. Hit him with a Deep Fissure, Heavy Attack, Fetcher Infection, Heavy Attack, Deep Fissure, Bar Swap. Then you'll just recast your buffs. Recast your dots, rinse and repeat. So you can see I really only use Sated Fury when I'm on my front bar. Now you can quickly swap back if you want, but your health tends to get a little bit low. So it's really up to you and what you're comfortable doing with Sated Fury. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap up the Magicka Warden Vampire build for the Greymoor chapter. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Of course, if you did, don't forget to crush that like button. It definitely helps out the channel. Also, if you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button for more build videos just like this one. And be sure to turn on those notifications so you don't miss anything. If you'd like to support the channel further, there's links below to my social media as well as the new website, which, by the way, there will be a written version of this entire build on the website, so go check that out later if you're interested. Big shout out, as always, to our channel members here at HDM who are going out of their way to support the channel financially. I appreciate all of you very much. As always, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're doing well. Stay safe out there, and I will see you around in the next video.